Welcome to the Self-Care Show with Deidre Sanford. Although holistic and alternative healing methods are becoming more and more mainstream, what method is right for you? How do you find a practitioner once you've chosen to explore an alternative therapy? Each week, Deidre will explore a different modality with practitioners who will explain their modality and the benefits they and their clients have received through their sessions. She and her guests may also offer live readings during the show. Now, your host of the Self-Care Show, Deidre Sanford.
Good morning. It's Wednesday Self-Care Day, and you're all tuned in right here on WLTK-DB. I'm Deidre Sanford, your host, and I cannot wait for all of you to meet. Good morning, Dawn. For all of you to meet today's guest. She is a personal inspiration for me, and I know she is an inspiration for so many other people. Before we dive into Theresa and her story, I want to talk a little bit about resiliency. And I think one of the things that we all learn as we go throughout our lives is we have more resiliency within us than we really know. And we find it in the strangest ways and in the strangest moments. Resiliency is, very simply put, the ability to spring back into shape, or elasticity. What that does for me is it kind of convolutes the whole conversation on resiliency. Spring back into shape seems a little odd because rarely, as we go through life's trials and tribulations and find our own resiliency within, rarely are we the same shape that we were when we come out on the other side. So it kind of, I think, is better said, it's those things we go through in life, good morning, Courtney, that shape who we are after challenging who we think we are. What happened in your life to challenge who you thought you were? What happened in your life that made you come out on the other side of that event kind of a different person? Maybe physically a different person, and that presented challenges, and learning to adapt to what that physical challenge was, whether it was short term or a longer term change for you. I went through that when I had cellulitis in my foot. This is where we also talk about Western medicine has its place. Truly, Western medicine saved my life. I spent 7 days in the hospital. And when I left the hospital, I had a walker. I literally could no longer use my left foot. That was one of my lessons in resiliency. I can walk normally now, or as normally as I could with that foot prior to that diagnosis, but it was weeks and actually a couple of months of learning to go from using my walker to get from just my living room to my bathroom, not being able to carry my lunch from the kitchen to my chair, to being able to use a cane. And then, of course, to being able to walk without assistance. Challenges were mental, challenges were physical, certainly, and challenges were also emotional. And that is something from which I bounced back. You've all heard the story about losing my brain function. I couldn't count. I couldn't do simple math. I couldn't do simple tasks in my home. I would get brain fatigue and only be able to function for very short periods of time before I would be forced to acknowledge I needed to sit back and rest. Again, something I bounced back from, but boy, did that change the shape of my life, right? I sold my home. I moved. Not too long after that, I got married. And I walked into the world of root cause therapy and got myself back on path with my energy healing work and my psychic mediumship work. That was my change for the positive. So my dear friend, Theresa, has agreed to join us today and share her story and her inspirations. And I can't wait, like I said, to bring her into the show. But a little bit about Theresa first. Theresa L. Goodrich, as you can find on the internet and in the publishing world, is an Emmy-winning author and content creator. And she's got a penchant for storytelling, as well as a keen eye. She is the founder of The Local Tourist, which celebrates its 21st year in 2023. She's a passionate writer, speaker, and traveler. Theresa's made a living out of traveling the country and telling its stories. In addition to her website, she's also the author and publisher of multiple books. And she knew as a little girl that she wanted to be a writer when she grew up. And while it didn't take a cancer diagnosis to prompt her to follow her dream, being gut punched with her own mortality invited her to double down on what she wanted to do with her life. Not only did she write and publish a book during chemotherapy, her treatment ended in 2021. She's also published 3 more books, including her first novel. Theresa shared her ups and downs from the moment of diagnosis, and the result was a community of not only supporters, but also others who've drawn inspiration from her candid transparency. Theresa plans to publish a book about her experience, and boy, the way she writes, that's no surprise. She cranks them out and they're beautiful. And her firm belief that people, most of them anyway, are kind. Mike, let's bring Theresa live into the show and introduce her to everyone who's here with us today. Good morning, Theresa.
Good morning. Thank you for the wonderful introduction.
You wrote it, my friend, and I
know.
can't write it any other way. But the reason I mention that, and I usually don't, is just to illustrate the voice with which you write, the authenticity that you put into everything that you do, and your free willingness to share with all of us who you are.
Yeah. And as you know, bios are hard.
Bios are very difficult. I changed not a thing except, tripping over my own words.
Well, the additions that you made touched me in my heart. So thank you very much. So I appreciate that.
Thank you for agreeing to come and join me
Hi,
today
Dawn.
and
Sorry.
share yourself and your journey with all of us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me. I mean,
Oh my
I get
gosh.
to talk to you, so that's amazing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we love our time together. I've known Theresa for a few years. We were brought together by a mutual friend, and we don't see each other all the time, but Theresa is one of those folks who, once you're attached and tethered, nothing really changes regardless of what else is happening. Other than the fact that every time I hear from you, every time I read something that you've written, I gain more and more inspiration for my own life.
Oh, thank you. I'm
And
so
Dawn says you're the best hugger. So let's go back a little bit. I know that you're in an amazing space of continued growth now, and you never really slowed your growth through your journey.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit in the introduction about your gut punch.
Yes.
Would you share some of that experience with us?
Yes. So this was 2020, and I had just turned 50 in May. I had never gotten a mammogram before, even though I should have gotten one when I turned 40. So I was about a decade behind. But I turned 50 and I was like, okay, I've got to start checking all these boxes. I actually hadn't been to a doctor in probably a decade. I felt fine. I felt good. So I made my appointments. I went for my general checkup, then found out I had high blood pressure, and I'm like, oh, okay. So my illusion that I was perfectly healthy was a little dimmed at that point. And then we went ahead and scheduled the mammogram and took that, and they found something that concerned them. They found a lump. They said, well, don't worry about it. We'll do another mammogram, did another ultrasound. And then on August 18th of 2020, I found out that it actually was breast cancer. And that was, now my husband and I, or as we call him, Mr. TLT or Jim, and he's a mutual friend. That's how Deidre and I met. And we decided to go camping after I had that ultrasound. It's like, let's go camping. I want to unplug. I don't want to keep looking at my chart because now you get the results in your chart before the doctor even talks to you. And that can be anxiety inducing.
Right.
So we went camping and I had no connection. And it wasn't until we were finished camping, we were done. I just laid in a hammock and Jim sat next to me, and I'm probably going to cry a few times, just so you know. Jim sat next to me, and he just nudged me every now and then to make sure that I was still flowing back and forth and rocking back and forth. And I was just looking at the sky and did that for hours. And I never do that. I mean, Deidre, you know,
No.
I never sit still,
Mhm.
but that's what I needed. And I just absorbed everything, you know, that was around me, and the beauty of the campground and the trees and the sky. And we broke down camp. I'm sitting on the park bench, and my doctor calls. Everything's put away except for the tarp. And then she told me, "Oh, and by the way, got the tarp out, and this little tiny baby frog just decides to set up camp on this little tarp." So that's why it was still there, and we hadn't put it away yet because we're like, "Oh, he's so cute." And then I get the call and I sit down, and that's when I got the gut punch, and my world changed in ways that I had no idea that it was going to change. But yeah, so that was August 18th of 2020. So in the middle of the beginnings of a pandemic.
Right.
And as a travel writer, my job had already disappeared.
Yeah.
And then I get the notice that my first mammogram did its job, but I had breast cancer.
And it was amazing that you and Jim were able to just pack up and find some peace. And I understand that all of the thoughts, all of the emotions, hey, Casey, all of the thoughts, all of the emotions went with you. But it's an example, I think, of how we need to allow ourselves to take some time to just marinate in that before we can get through that with new perspectives. And I think it's really kind of fortuitous that as I sat down at my dad's desk this morning, I reached over and I started playing with his kaleidoscope. And this kaleidoscope has been around at least 30, 40 years. And I rarely pay any attention to it. But again, resilience and the other ever-changing patterns of our lives, of our emotions, of our thought processes, and how we can share that with everyone.
Yes.
And if I remember correctly, there was a little bit of downtime before you became public with your situation. And I think I'll just call it that. I don't know why. And certainly, you know, rightly so, you needed to be able to frame for yourself what was happening, where you were, and Jim, of course, where you guys both were. What prompted you to start sharing with us?
Well, part of it was just the sheer isolation, because my parents are in North Carolina. Jim's parents are in California. My son had moved to North Carolina, a different part of the state. You know, but beyond that, we couldn't really see much of anybody.
Yeah.
And it was a few weeks before then, we had done a socially distanced trip for work. I went to Eagle Ridge Resort and Spa in Galena, and they had me there just to show that they were a good place to go if you needed to get out of town.
Yeah.
But that still meant we weren't talking to anybody. So I wasn't, and I'm an extroverted introvert. I need my downtime. I need my alone time, but I also thrive on social interactions. Right. I mean, you know.
Your hugs are a very good example of that.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Dawn, for saying that too. I agree I say the same about you. But it was just the two of us. And I don't think I actually thought through, well, this is going to be really hard for Jim too, to take on this emotional, you know, he's got to be there to support me, and me going through that and all of the unbelievable emotions that you experience. It's a lot for one other person to handle and to be the only other person. So I think it was a couple days. I didn't wait too long after the diagnosis before I first posted. And I remember the first line I just wrote, "Hi, I have cancer.
Yep.
And then I just went on to explain what had happened and the outpouring of love and support. I mean, it filled me up. It filled my soul. It let me know that I wasn't alone and that Jim wasn't alone. And it was like a drug. It was, it was like,
It
okay,
is.
what?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was that I could feel the love, the prayers. I mean, I had people from all over the country, different parts of the world telling me that they were praying for me, sending me their, woo, their good thoughts. I mean, you were definitely one of those. And it just lifted me up. And I decided from the very beginning that if I'm going to share this, if I be public about it, then I'm going to be public about all of it. And like you said, it's so important to marinate in those feelings.
Yeah.
And let yourself feel that pain, that fear, that anger, that grief, all of it. And the joy and the gratitude.
But if we don't clear the decks or give ourselves the opportunity to clear the decks of the yucky part,
Mm-hmm.
then we don't give ourselves a lot of wiggle room to allow in the more positive, high vibe, joy, gratitude for the
Mm-hmm.
outpouring of support. And I think that, well, let's just take a minute to talk about the isolation that you brought up, because it's already 2020.
Mm-hmm.
We're already into this pandemic. Everyone in some way, shape, or form is affected in their daily activities, their daily lives, and their connection to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And here you are being handed one additional type of isolation that would be difficult for anyone to navigate given the best of circumstances, but we're already all disconnected from each other.
Yes. It was, I mean, at that point, we were still grocery shopping wearing masks. And, and I could do that up until I started chemotherapy. After that point, forget it. And we didn't enter a grocery store or any place for months. I didn't see anybody except for my parents, who came to visit for a little bit, came to support, and then waving at whoever dropped the groceries off at the front door, because Instacart became our, new best friend.
Right.
But that was it. So it was Jim and me and, the walls of our home. And yeah, that was because, and we had to realize it wasn't, for me, it wasn't just the possibility of catching COVID. If I caught a cold, I could, it could be devastating.
Right.
So yeah, so that was additionally, and it was, I think, and I'm going to acknowledge my husband, Jim Goodrich, very strongly right now, because I at least got to see my medical team once a week. I went in on Mondays and I had my chemo. Well, and then on Tuesdays I'd go in and I'd have to have a boost for my white blood cells, Neulasta shot. And I got to see them. So Jim didn't get to see anybody. He just got to see me. And bless his heart, I didn't lose my hair. We shaved our heads together. He shaved his head in solidarity. And so I lost everything, it was all gone. In some ways that was good. No more shaving, but he would just look at me and tell me that I was beautiful, even though I felt like I looked like a mannequin, without the wig on. I mean, it was that anyway. So that I at least had the privilege of seeing people once a week, and Jim didn't even have that. So and that's something that doesn't get addressed very often, is what the caretaker goes through.
Right.
And
yeah.
I just
it really doesn't.
Thank you, honey. I love you.
Jim is amazing. I knew Jim before I met Theresa, and he's just one of those people, and so are you, T, that just uplifts other people. And you do so through compassion. Your magic ingredient, I don't know what it is, but I certainly am very, very, thrilled that you both have it and that you both share it. Since you brought up shaving heads,
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about that because it's symbolic of the way that you continue to uplift yourself. You and Jim work together to keep the both of you connected as you work through all of this. And you did it in a very public way,
Yeah.
which is, not unusual for the two of you. You're
Yeah.
both kind of out front in different ways at different times of the year, especially. But
Mhm.
you made it a fun process. And I know that there were a lot of people involved in making this happen to you. Talk with us a little bit about how your community came together. I know you know where I'm going with this,
I
how
do.
your community came together to help you to create a tremendous amount of fun
Well,
along the way.
um, I used to have and had for most of my adult life hair, long curly hair, long
Hair,
curly
hair,
hair down the middle of my back,
hair for
curly hair.
days.
Yes, hair for days. In fact, and when people would, say, "Oh, I saw you the other day. I recognized your hair," and that's what they would say, like because it was red and curly and long, and that was my signature.
Yeah.
And then when I found out that I was going to be taking the type of chemo that made your hair fall out, which I didn't realize that there are some types of chemotherapy do not. And chemotherapy is also individual based on the type of cancer you have. And it's individual based on the person too. But that's a side note. So when I found out that I would be losing my hair, I decided that I was going to donate it to Wigs for Kids, which is a charity out of Michigan. So what they do is they take human hair and they make wigs for children who have lost their hair or don't have hair through disease or for whatever reason. And so we decided to do a fundraiser. We did it on Facebook. We raised, I think we raised around $1,400, maybe close. I know I had a friend who told me if we raised 2,000, she'd shave her head as well. So we didn't quite reach 2,000 because she didn't have to shave. But then what we did was we filmed it live. Mom and Dad were over. We set ourselves up in front of the Christmas tree, and we shaved my head live on Facebook on video. And I actually still have that video, and I haven't posted it ever. I mean, I just had the live one, but I never posted it later. So I'm considering that. But that was I'll see pictures of that occasionally, and it was definitely difficult. But that made it fun too. I
Yeah.
mean, we were laughing the whole time. We were having fun. Like we put my hair in ponytail because we had to put in ponytails to be
Yeah.
able to donate it. So I had these little pigtails all around my head, and then we just cut it and then shave it. And my wonderful, wonderful in-laws, I have the best in-laws in the world. They had sent us these cute, adorable knit Christmas tree hats before we'd done this. So that way, anytime we went out, and the rest of the year, and this was the day after Thanksgiving, by the way, because my first chemo was the Monday of Thanksgiving week. So it was the day after Thanksgiving, and I just went ahead, shaved it all, sent it off, and my in-laws had given us these. They were knit trees with little knit ornaments and a white
So
pom-pom on the top. And Jim and I both had them. So every time I'd go to chemo, I'd wear that. And anytime, now in the winter when we go out, we'll wear those caps, and they always bring a smile to somebody's face. So it was just another way to say, hey, look, if I'm going to be bald, at least I can be a Christmas tree.
At least they could have fun with it.
Right.
And it wasn't you were kind of making light of your situation. Well, not kind of, you were, in the way that you presented the opposite. Once you were through with going through that very raw, very open process of shaving heads, you made a game out of presenting yourself. This is who I am. I'm owning it, and I'm going to make it fun.
Mm.
But I also know, and we saw in the live video, that it was really a very true, very raw emotional experience for you to essentially, in an aspect, lose your identity, lose part of your public notoriety.
Yes.
And then you brought back this aspect of your public image, of your personal image, that is your fun side with the whimsy and I'm going to enjoy this no matter what else is happening. Your constant internal resiliency, your constant public act of resiliency were such very loud statements of, I'm changed.
You're
And
gonna
damn it,
make me
we're gonna have a good time doing it. Oh girl, I can't even tell you how much I cried with you. Just being on the outside edge of the process that you so generously and so bravely shared with all of us.
Well, thank you. I've always been okay. Well, this sucks. Now what? And that was kind of pretty much an extreme. Well, this sucks now much. But I had all this support. Like I said, I had my parents, they dropped everything and they drove out and stayed with us. And, the day before we put on this massive Thanksgiving dinner. Yes, I'd had chemo that Monday. They came out Tuesday. Or no, it was Tuesday night. And I couldn't even say hi. But Thursday, Mom and I are in the kitchen. We're making Thanksgiving dinner. And it was just, life handed us as the cliche goes, like a barrel of lemons, and we just poured vodka in it. But then I had an idea. Another really wonderful friend of mine, Kara Caribou, she sent me a wig. And I was able to get wigs from the cancer center. They have a store there where cancer patients can go and they can shop. Well, it was closed because of the pandemic, but my nurse advocate, she would bring me all these wigs to try on while I was in the middle of my chemo, because you just sit there for hours,
Right.
And and I didn't realize, I wasn't even thinking. She brought me 4 wigs and I tried all 4 of them on. And I'm taking selfies and posting them on Facebook. Like, what do you guys think? Which one should I keep? And just like you said, trying to make light of it and like, hey, I can be a whole new person. And when she came back in, well, because I tried them on because of COVID, I ended up having to keep all of them. And I felt terrible.
Yeah.
Well, I decided that I was going to do a little thing called 12 Wigs of Christmas and roped my husband in. I mean, I say rope, he was more than a willing participant. But I have another good friend, Meryl Morris, and she porch dropped 8 more wigs. And these are fabulous wigs. She does this New Year's Eve party, and they are these huge, just some of them are huge. There's one that's black and blue. They're just fun.
That's one of my favorite ones, the black and blue one.
Yeah, I loved that one. I think that was my New Year's Eve one. But that's the one where Jim tried to look like Devo. So anyway,
yeah,
each day from Christmas Day until January 5th, we did photo shoots. We did a bunch of them actually when my mom was there. Mom got totally into it.
Yeah.
She knew they had to go home for a little bit in between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So when she went home, she brought back my grandma's jewelry, some of her jewelry, some clothes, and we just put together all these different outfits and looks. And Kara had also sent me these magnetic eyelashes. So there were these 12 different sizes. I mean, from, not much longer than what I have now to giant diva eyelashes. And so we did a photo shoot, and every day I'd share photos of the 2 of us. And Jim didn't just put on a wig, he put on a persona. I mean, we both put on personas. But,
oh yeah.
I mean, I would never know what he was going to be. Like one day he was a lumberjack, another day he's a magician, and another day he's like a philosopher from the 1700s. I mean, it's just, and every day we'd post these, people would just be like, I have been waiting for this all day. Where are the pictures?
You really brought all of us into your process by sharing these steps along the way. You created this amazing sense of excitement and curiosity for all the rest of us. And it was bringing us into your process and sharing all of the aspects of the journey. You did talk about some of your own internal struggles, absolutely. You
Yeah.
owned those, and I am not real sure there's a whole lot you held back from sharing with us.
No,
But your
not
main
really.
focus was on always keeping your community intrigued, involved, wanting to be supportive. And I know that what you did wasn't designed to create your community, it was designed to share your experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sharing
And
is
I tell
caring.
you what?
Sharing is caring.
Yeah. And I tell you what, those photo shoots were hard, especially the first one,
Oh, yeah.
because I'm like, this isn't me. This isn't me. And that's so I'm doing all these, I just kept posing. And the more we did, the more comfortable I got
Yeah.
with them. And I think you can see that actually the photo that I use as
Oh.
my profile picture for my business now is of the big white wig. And I've got this goofy look on my face because I'm like, that's me. That's who I am. But going through that process of this isn't me. But it helped me to access the different parts of me, I guess I should say. And I think that's part of what was so important for me about sharing this entire experience is that we just don't know what our depths are. And until you're really, I don't want to say until you're forced to examine it in that way, because I don't believe you have to go through something as much of a gut punch to really discover who you truly are. For me, it was just it was accelerated. I was kind of already on that path because
Yeah.
I'm a journal writer. I write my journal every morning, and I'm tend to do a lot of self-analysis. But this was one where I really couldn't do a whole lot. So
I love that the resiliency within you was actually shared and brought to us. And it gave us an opportunity to maybe look at ourselves and some of our own resiliency or lack thereof. And how do we find different ways to find our own resiliency through the sharing of your journey up to that point? And that's exactly where I was wanting to get to. You did it beautifully. I opened the door wide and you ran with it, and you told so much about yourself and about your journey just in sharing with us those raw moments of the shared head shaving day. And then the pure joy and fun that you brought to all of us and then brought back to us today through talking about all of the wigs and the personas that you could adapt and bring to life for us throughout the process of the photo shoot with the wigs. We're going to take a super quick station break. And when we come back, I want to talk with you a little bit more about how finding what you needed was so essential. Grab your coffee, get your fresh cup of water, whatever it is you need to do during the next couple of minutes. We will be right back right here on WLTK-DB.
Looking for a holistic solution? Look no further than LimestreetWellness.com. Lime Street Wellness is a full-service Reiki therapy center offering in-person and distant Reiki sessions. Additionally, Lime Street Wellness is committed to helping clients co-create healthier outcomes with hypnosis, QHHT, and intuitive advice. Lime Street Wellness is committed to helping all that are seeking to co-create better health, peace of mind, and greater freedom. Reiki Master Kevin Mackey uses energy medicine, hypnosis, mindfulness, and intuitive guidance to assist in uncovering, understanding, and removing any blocks or energy cords or mental mindsets that may be intruding and causing needless suffering. Visit Lime Street Wellness today at LimestreetWellness.com. That's LimestreetWellness.com.
And we're back. Hey, everybody. Thanks for sticking around with us. We love having you here, Casey and Dawn and everyone else who's checked in to let us know that you're here. We appreciate you. If you're just joining us, we are talking this morning with Theresa Goodrich, dear friend of mine.
Mhm.
I am going to, dare I say, cancer survivor?
Yes, you may.
Can
Yep,
we go there? Yes.
we can.
Authoress,
Mhm.
content creator, amazing wife, hugely supportive, compassionate, wonderful, caring, giving individual who chooses to share with all of us, anyone who picks up her books, jumps over to her website, joins her Facebook page, to share her journey of life, not just through this journey that she's been on with this cancer journey, but also with her everyday life. You're just such an amazing, fabulous inspiration of finding the silver lining, even in your darkest moments.
Thank you.
I also know that you take the time to honor those darker moments, to explore yourself,
Mhm.
to figure out how can I navigate myself through this?
Yeah.
How do I come out on the other side as a shiny new penny? Who am I going to create next? And you've stayed yourself at baseline for certain, but how did your own self-care throughout this process, and we've touched on some of your self-care points,
Mhm.
but how did your own self-care really truly become of such value to you through this process?
Really paying attention to what I was feeling and experiencing and allowing myself to feel and experience that was, it was incredible to give myself that kind of permission. And I mentioned earlier that I keep a journal,
Yeah,
and that is my time. It's the first thing I do every morning, and that is my time to let it all out, no matter what it is. Nobody is ever going to read that. In fact,
right,
I'm gonna leave instructions in my will to burn them because there's stuff I don't want anybody to ever read.
right.
Because it's raw. It's just railing at the wind, and
Mhm.
if I need to, or the the big dreams I have, but if I'm angry, like I mentioned earlier, there are just so many emotions you experience with something like this, but in life, period. I mean, you experience grief and pain and anger, and it's okay. I think it's better for you to acknowledge it, get it out, and that's what that is for me. That's how I get it out. I have a special notebook. I have a special pen. I close my door. I'm not disturbed. And I set a timer for 30 minutes and I just let out whatever's going on in here. By the end of it, I am always, always in a better place. By the end of it, it's a pep talk. By the end of it, it's like, I am powerful. I am strong. I have got this. And
Yes.
it's consistent and it's been that way even through the darkest times. But it's by there's something that Jim and I will say, my husband and I will say to each other. If we have something that's a little awkward or uncomfortable, we
Mhm.
might say, I just need to say this so I get it out and I'm not
Right.
stewing. It doesn't grow. And then that kind of prepares the other to know, okay, what I'm hearing may be uncomfortable for me to hear. And then he'll say it or I'll say it, but we're in a place to hear it. Well,
Mhm.
I feel like it's important that we do that for ourselves as well. It's like, okay, it's uncomfortable, but get it out. Don't hold it in. And then you can be appreciative of all the good things. Often feel like if I just start off with, I'm grateful for this and that, and the rest, which I often do. I mean, but if there's something that's really stewing or hurting me or in
Mhm.
some way, then I think it's really important to acknowledge it and not try to gloss over it, because then it can feel false. And that gratitude may not have the same resonance as it might if you say, this really, really sucks, but I can't do anything about that part of it. However, I do have this, and that's really good. And I think I'm gonna focus on that for now. So that having that kind of mindset really helped tremendously. And it
It's
helps
not an easy
surpass.
mindset to just suddenly develop one day. It's a process.
Yes, yeah, and it's a
Um,
process I've been working on for decades.
right. I love what you said about not being false. So
Mhm,
kind of want to just touch on that a little bit. And that I believe what you were saying is not looking at the icky, emotion stuff and then glossing over it or just tossing it. But really looking at it, feeling it, experiencing it, dive deep, sit with it, marinate in it, if you will. And I used to think in terms of, okay, set a timer. And I think that's a little bit too specific because with any grief process, there is no timer. There's no set pattern that we follow. We all grieve in our own way. Although Miss Kubler-Ross, her first name is not in my head, she certainly had some steps down, but we all had to come to the realization that we don't do those things in order. We don't go through grief and anger and bargaining and acceptance. And sometimes we get there and then we back up and we go through it again.
Yeah.
So I love that you're sharing with us the realness of the part of your journey is actually acknowledging and experiencing those things which are uncomfortable, giving ourselves the opportunity to express those things, better out than in, right? Whether you're verbally discussing them with Jim or putting them in your journal for yourself to just dump and maybe look at later and say, well, look how far I've come. Getting to that point of true gratitude rather than using gratitude as a way to ignore the unhappy, uncomfortable, deeply hurtful, etc. Once that gratitude can become truly authentic, it really can help us to make our own major shifts at the end of a process or even in the middle of a process just to help us get the rest of the way through it.
Yeah. I think gratitude can often be used it can sometimes be used as a mask because especially in the last few years with everything that's happened. I mean, you want to talk about survivor's guilt. And it felt and feels uncomfortable, weird, ungrateful, guilty, to feel grateful that I survived cancer during a pandemic when so many people didn't survive. And I've had to reconcile that in myself. And part of the way I do that is knowing that, I don't survive and I don't honor the people who have gone through more difficult troubles or struggles or even lost their lives by being sad or diminishing myself. Expanding everything that I am able to do and am capable of doing is how I honor anybody who's suffered or experienced something, some loss or in some way. And I think that's true for everybody, that it's by being the best possible person that we can be and by growing and learning and sharing our, sharing our light and our gifts and our beauty, then we make the world a better place. It's that whole, rising tide lifts all boats. And I believe that with my heart, that if I can make one person smile, that person's going to make another person smile, and it's just going to go around the world. And so I that's how I deal with I look at the anger and the grief and the guilt that I sometimes, and the uncomfortable feelings, like, okay, I'm allowed to feel that, even though maybe my loss isn't as great as somebody else's, my loss is still valid. Now, where do I go from here? And how do I grow from here?
In so many ways, every single day, in small ways, and in some really big ways. You're a master at finding your way through a very difficult time and helping grow other people through sharing your experience. Part of it is the authenticity with which you share your experiences and your emotions and your reactions to things and people, and whether it be an interaction with someone on a personal level or things that you're looking at and talking about that are on a much larger scale, a more global level. You just have a way of impacting people in such a positive way while acknowledging the collective emotions that are heavy and deeper. but then bringing us back to this amazing place of growth and development and support and shiny new penny. And it's all seems so natural for you. And I am absolutely certain that at your core, a lot of that is absolutely who you are. But there's also been a lot of work that's gone into further developing that and finding a way to authentically share your gratitude, your learnings, and some of the things that you teach. So thank you for choosing to be here, to be on all of your social formats, all of that amazing things. Casey is a regular WLTK-DB listener and participant, and she's been with us on this show several times. I did notice that earlier, Casey, and thank you for reminding me to come back to it, because it sort of brings us back to the very beginning of what Theresa has been sharing with us today. Let's go back to your camping trip.
Okay.
And not wanting to put the tarp away because a frog had come by and made its home. Little tiny baby frog. Casey popped in. It was awesome. And I know both of you well enough to know that you literally were sitting there watching this frog and just enjoying having this frog in your space and sharing time with you. So Casey popped this acronym for you. And it says, for those of you who can't see but are just listening to the podcast, FROG, frog, stands for forever rely on God. And Casey brought us back to the full circle. She's specifically put that in for you, referencing
thank you, Casey,
the frog that was on the tarp.
Thank you.
Theresa, before I let you go today, I absolutely want to thank you for sharing with all of us your story and part of your journey. I want to ask you if you can highlight for us, I don't know, 3 to 5 things that you learned to put into practice for yourself as self-care. I know journaling is huge for you. What else can we add to that?
Well, one of the more recent things I've started doing is meditating. And I'd been hesitant because it seems so like such a big thing. Well, I set my timer for 3 minutes and I just started breathing and counting my breathing. And I always light a candle when I write my journal in the morning. So I have my ritual and I have my plants. And anyway, so I started meditating. Now I'm only doing 5 minutes every morning, but it is incredible how much it centers me. And all I do is I breathe, and it's been phenomenal. Another thing, and I did this through my journaling, and this is something that I really wanted to make sure that we talked about today, is that I found out what my core is, what is the most important to me. Because while I was under, in isolation, the double punch of isolation, I had lots of time to think about what I wanted my life to be. And when you get that kind of diagnosis, you also start thinking, are my days numbered? And if so, how do I want to spend them? And I knew there was no question. I came back to writing. And I've always been I've always been susceptible to the bright, shiny object syndrome, that bright, shiny penny, as you mentioned. And this keeps those bright, shiny objects, off in the corner somewhere, and they can keep gathering and piling up because I have my bright, shiny object, and that is writing. And so now everything I do is centered around this one core belief that this is why I'm here. I am here to write. I'm a writer. That's what I do. It's who I am. And I found that by just in my journaling practice, just thinking about what I want my dream life to be. Like, I picture my dream life, and every day it always included writing. So I was like, well, I guess that's it then. Other things I do for self-care, besides the permission to be angry if I want to, or sad, or any of those negative emotions. And I think when you give yourself permission, you get them out a lot faster. And just a tip, pillow shams are great if you're angry and you need to kick something. Just saying. Baths and when I take a bath, it's a production. They're candles.
It's a ritual.
Yes, it's a ritual. I have a book. I play music. There are candles. There's usually either a glass of wine or a cup of tea. But yeah, and yeah, so those are, and just being open, being vulnerable. The one thing, the biggest thing I learned about people, the biggest blessing I got from this entire experience, and it's one that I will carry forever, is that people are kind for the most part. Most of them are. And I found that if you're vulnerable and you're open and you're honest, they're going to want to support you. They're going to want to give you their love. Now, you don't have to be as open and vulnerable as I've been. But I've seen it with, I've had several other friends who have been diagnosed with cancer and other diseases since I got my gut punch. And I'm much more aware now of how people interact with others when somebody has that kind of experience. And I am seeing the same outpouring of support and love and affection. And, we're here for you, for all of them, for everybody. It's just been phenomenal to see this. I mean, it's like you can feel the love. So I feel like there's so much concern about people being angry and I don't know, just not kind to each other. But my experience is that they are, and people are, and that's always been my belief. Deidre, I think my first book, I took that trip because I wanted to prove that people were kind. I wanted to travel the country and visit people all over the country because I wanted to experience and prove that people are kind. And it just reinforced. Every time I put myself out there, it's reinforced. So I challenge you, everybody, to try that belief yourself.
Yay! I've loved watching certain aspects of your journey. I don't want to tell you I love watching the whole journey because in some extent I certainly wish part of that journey hadn't had to happen. But the things that you've drawn out for us today, the way that you can speak to owning and accepting your emotions and allowing yourself to have them, because so many of us aren't taught that it's okay to have emotions, especially men. Sharing your experience, sharing is caring. Part of the healing is in the telling, and that's something that I've learned certainly throughout my years. I love, love, love your attitude, your approach to problem solving. And I'm so appreciative that you chose to come and join us today in this very public format and share your experience with us. I know there is more to come as far as sharing your journey and your experience. And I know that for you, as with all things you do, it's meant to be uplifting and inspirational. There's that cautionary tale that you have learned on your own is don't just bury all of those low vibe, yucky emotions nobody wants to look at. Look at them, face them. It's part of your strength. It's part of your power.
Yeah.
You are not only a journaler. You're not only someone who has chosen to share her very private experience. You have so many other things that you've written. Where do we find you? Where do we find your website? How do we access what you've written?
Thank you for asking. TheLocalTourist.com. That is the site that is celebrating its 21st year. Hard to believe it's old enough to drink. It's
It's like your baby.
Yeah, exactly. So TheLocalTourist.com. I'm now I'm my own publisher. I publish my books under my own imprint. So all my books are there as well. And you'd mentioned in the very beginning, or I did because I wrote the intro, that I will most likely be turning this into a book. I had started blogging or, writing about the pandemic when I started under this category of Diary of a Cockeyed Optimist. Well, that came to be quite appropriate later on that year. So I will be eventually writing and publishing Diary of a Cockeyed Optimist, and it'll be about this whole experience and basically what we've been talking about today. But that's probably another year down the road. But everything else is at thelocaltourist.com.
And when we say everything else, there is so much other material there that is not related to your personal journey. You've got the Navy Peer Guide, you've got Turkeys or Jerks, or and then my brain just stopped. You've got your amazing first fiction novel, Peril on the Peninsula. You have your second one coming out soon. They're all told with such humor and such grace and such authenticity and style. Your characters have amazing development. They have fabulous stories, and they share your humor as well.
Thanks. They're fun to write, I tell you.
Oh, I can't even imagine. I know what it's like to sit down and have just a fun one-on-one conversation with you over cocktails. I can't even imagine how much fun these people are as they develop in your mind.
It's a party in there, I tell you.
Well, I want to thank Mr. TLT backstage. Hey, Jim, for supporting you through this journey, for bringing you into my world as my friend. It is an honor for me to be able to say you are my friend. I enjoy you immensely.
Likewise.
And I know he's sitting in the other room over there, so I can't even imagine what kind of chuckles or groans came from some of the sarcastic wit that we shared today. Dawn has decided that it's time for her to run out and buy some pillow shams.
You won't regret it. Tell me. I tell you.
Casey will probably never forget your frog story.
Yeah.
And I, of course, will forever be appreciative to you for coming on to the Self-Care Show on WLTK-DB and sharing all of you with all of us today.
Oh, thank you, Deidre. Love you.
Love you
You're
too.
a blessing.
Thank you. Everybody else, stick around. WLTK-DB will come back to life this afternoon at 3 o'clock with Kelly Brickle. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, you guys. Have a fantastic week, and we will see you next week.
The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.